Hi, I'm Steve Morgan, founder of Cybersecurity Ventures and editor-in-chief at Cybercrime magazine. I'm here today with Roger Grimes, data-driven defense evangelist for KnowBe4, the world's first and largest new school security awareness training and simulated phishing platform that helps you manage the ongoing problem of social engineering. To learn more about KnowBe4, visit knowbe4.com. Roger, great to have you with us today.
Good, and I'm glad to be here.
So, Roger, you've written more than 1,000 articles on computer security. Most of us in the community have either heard you on the radio, read one of your books. You spent 11 plus years at Microsoft as a principal security architect. For the past 3 years, you've been with KnowBe4. You've seen it all. Talk to us about ransomware. It's creating more damage now than ever before. How is this possible?
Yeah, and sadly, I don't think everybody knows about what ransomware is doing today. About a year ago, so it used to be for a long time ransomware. The first ransomware program I remember was 1989, but it really got kind of kicked off in 2005 and 2007 when Bitcoin allowed them to get paid without getting caught. And everybody knows it as, hey, it encrypts your data and your computers. You got to pay your money and get it back. But starting last year, about a year ago, about this month, ransomware started to do some other things. They got tired of people having good backups and not paying them. So they actually started to, number one, look around in companies for quite a while. The average ransomware program is in a big company for up to 8 months before it goes off.
Wow.
But they look around, they find the data that's the crown jewels of a company, customer files, employee files, their product files, patents, that sort of stuff, emails, and they exfiltrate it out of the network. And then they say, if you don't pay us, we're going to post this data on the internet, or we're going to give it to hackers, or we're going to give it to your competitors. They're stealing more and more passwords than ever before. It used to be they would steal passwords, but only so they could spread around the network. Then they started using TrickBot and some other type of malware programs to collect passwords. And they actually collect passwords of employees and customers, and they go on to attack those people. And they tell them, hey, we are making your life kind of a living hell only because your employer did not pay us, 2% of net revenues or something like that. They're also going out of the way to embarrass the company. They've created PR websites where they're like, hey, we broke into this person. This is the data we have. They're even auctioning the data off. So the combination of new things that they're doing, I got to tell you, it's pretty amazing. I hear a lot of people go, well, we're not going to pay the ransom. We're not going to pay the ransom. I'm like, I don't think until they have your data and what data they have, and it's out and they're threatening to put it out there to the world, do you really know whether or not you're going to pay that ransom? Because, there's a lot of reputational harm. I don't think any of us want our private emails and top secrets in our company out there on the internet for everybody to see. Like, even in the best of companies, there are things that are said between employees and things that are said about maybe a customer's frustrating somebody. You don't want that out on the internet. So it can cause us long-term reputational harm. So we started to see this data exfiltration and threat to release it on the internet about November of last year. But when the threat was made, when the person didn't pay, they didn't release it. But by December, they were actually releasing the data. Now it's very, very common. And because of that, the pay rate for how often somebody paid the ransom went from about 40% to close to 90%. I have some friends that all they do is ransomware stuff, and they say they have not personally. And when I say they do ransomware stuff, they do like 1,000, 1,500 ransomware responses a year. Two of the guys I know said that they have not been involved in a ransomware incident where the victim hasn't paid the ransom in the last year.
Wow. Now I have to back you up for a second. You're here today to talk to us about TrickBot, but you just said that ransomware is present in some companies for as much as 8 months.
Yeah,
that's astonishing.
Yeah, so what happens with most ransomware these days, not all of it, there's all different types, but the first thing a person gets exploited by, usually through social engineering or unpatched software, is it's called a stub downloader program. It's just a small, tiny program, and the first thing it does is connect outbound to the command and control servers, the CNC servers, and the first thing it does is download new versions so that and it's kind of interesting. I download malware and ransomware all the time, and I run it. It's amazing. Most of the time, it's all unscannable. And I compare any malware sample I get to Google's Virus Total, which is 72 antivirus engines running. Most of the stuff I get is unscannable, or undetectable. and that all 72 antivirus engines are saying that they can't detect it as anything malicious. But like the other day, I downloaded one and Windows Defender detected it as malicious, but I told it because I was testing it, go ahead and run. In 1 second, it dialed out, got the new program, came back in, undetectable. And everything, it then spread 3 of their programs on my computer in different places, all undetectable. And what they do is they dial home, they get their latest instructions. Most of the time, they're told to wait. They notify the hacker. The hacker has an admin console that tells them all the different hundreds or thousands of places his program's broken into that day. But one of the biggest things the hackers do is they actually monitor the antivirus engines, oftentimes through Google's virustotal.com, and they're constantly updating that program so that you're never detecting it. I mean, the vast majority of ransomware that I play with is undetectable at the time that I'm playing with it for sure.
So let's talk about TrickBot. Microsoft says that they first spotted this in 2016, and it was a banking Trojan designed to steal banking credentials. Since then, TrickBot's operators have built a massive botnet, and they've created a malware as a service. Can you break it down for CIOs and CISOs? Maybe they don't have the type of technical background that some security practitioners do, but what is TrickBot?
Yeah, a lot of people call it ransomware as a service, but probably the biggest thing to its success is that it has many different components that the people that buy and use it can choose to turn on and off on the fly. So maybe your bot breaks into a Mac computer. It can use a different component and way to strip passwords than it would use on a Windows machine. It also incorporates like other code. A lot of times attackers will say, well, add Mimikatz. Mimikatz is this other program that's good at extracting Windows passwords and password hashes on Windows machines. It uses that. TrickBot, probably for me, it was the first one I saw that could ever it would intentionally look for cryptocurrency accounts and password manager accounts. So a lot of us run password manager programs, and they'll actually look for these programs, steal those passwords where the holy grail of your passwords are. Like TrickBot's holy grail to me was not only that it could be updated on the fly, and there was a lot of different components the different people that were renting the bots and stuff could use, but also it was probably the most aggressive at stealing passwords really fast. When I fire off TrickBot, I'll see this kick up in CPU activity. First of all, again, it's usually downloading, getting an update, finding out where it's supposed to connect next to. There's dynamic DNS and new domain host names. It gets new copies of itself. And then about 5 seconds later, boom, there's this flurry of activity as it's trying to steal every possible password that it can get, and then download that or send it, exfiltrate it to the hackers. And kind of wild, it's so good at it that we found other Trojan people borrowing it. So you would get this other infection from another ransomware program, but they would incorporate TrickBot, or they would rent TrickBot to come in and steal the password. So it was kind of like everybody's becoming a carpenter now, and like, oh, I need this guy that does internal cabinets really well. And then TrickBot would come in and was so good at stealing all these passwords. People said, well, why reinvent the wheel? Let me just use the thing that does it so well to start with.
So, Roger, several news stories ran earlier this month reporting that Microsoft shut down a massive hacking operation with the potential to impact the U.S. election infrastructure. I believe they shut down the servers behind TrickBot. Criminals were using that to launch ransomware and other types of cyber attacks. I know you've had a look at this. What exactly happened?
Yeah, so it was actually Microsoft and a bunch of other entities, but Microsoft was certainly one of the primary people. And Microsoft, I work there and I love it. They've got like 1,000 lawyers, and there are 1,000 lawyers that are really good at trying to pursue servers in other countries. That's the big thing. You have to get, you have to collect real evidence. You have to get warrants. You have to get judges, and you're getting these warrants and these subpoenas made on anonymous people that you don't know, John Does, right? So the warrants say John Doe 1, John Doe 2, John Doe 3, and so on. But they actually will prove that using evidence that these servers are being used maliciously, and then force the people that are hosting those servers, because many times they're at bulletproof hosting places that will not listen to anybody. But eventually, if you get enough law enforcement involved, it can shut those things down. So what they did is they were able to take down most of the command and control servers, take them over. And the part I love best is that Microsoft and the FBI, they actually changed the configuration file for all the infected TrickBot people. So before they shut down the command and control centers, they actually sent a configuration file update that basically defanged it. So you had these tens of millions of TrickBots and people that were exploited by TrickBot that when they came in, the next update said basically uninstall yourself, don't do anything wrong. Then they killed the command and control servers, really made the hackers quite mad. The people that monitored their activities said they were really, really mad and were saying, let's go format machines and do all this stuff. But it was interesting is that TrickBot, by the next day or 2 or 3 days, they had substantial new activity that was coming back up, and Microsoft and FBI and other people didn't give up. They shut those servers down. So it's been kind of an interesting battle, but it takes major players. It takes the Microsoft and the FBI and the UK and many other organizations working together. So it wasn't just Microsoft, but certainly having worked there, they're certainly a big part of that process and shutting down those command and control servers.
Now, do you think that could have actually impacted the election infrastructure? A lot of the news reporting, indicated that, that was the intention or could have been the fallout.
Yes, and let me say that I'm not someone that thinks, oh my God, the election process is going to be hacked and our votes stolen. It's absolutely still even possible. If anything that's on the internet can be hacked, America is somewhat protected in that you can't really, there's a ton of machines, a ton of different manufacturers. There's a ton of manual processes in it. Most of them aren't connected to the internet, but there are different components there are. And I'll tell you, so I'm not a conspiracy theory person, but I still think there's a good chance we could have some disruptions. I don't think it'll be nationwide, but I don't think, I think it's there's still a chance there could be some disruption in some places. We know for sure that they have still been attacking election offices, polling offices, getting polling data. The hard part about election stuff is you have to know ahead of time where you would have to change the votes and do it in a way that people didn't know. And every year we think, like in the US election, we're like, well, it's all Pennsylvania or whatever. And by the time the election's done, it's somewhere else that we didn't know about. And so the attacker would have to know exactly where the votes were coming with to change those votes to make a difference. So that's where it's a combination of a lot of different machines, a lot of different software to try to compromise. And you also have to predict where it would, in a national election, where it would actually matter. Because like right now, we're like, Florida's always close. You don't know if Florida is going to be close this year. Maybe it's Michigan or Wisconsin or Texas or Arizona. And so that's why it's really hard. But I think they could, just some well-placed ransomware on some voting machines could at least, it could cause some havoc and disinformation on election day. And I hope it doesn't happen. I think anybody saying that it can't happen is either lying or doesn't understand all the systems involved.
So Roger, we recently interviewed one of your colleagues at KnowBe4, James McQuiggan, and he spoke to us about a horrifying incident. There was a woman in Germany who died as a result of a ransomware attack, indirectly, but had it not been for that ransomware attack, she'd probably still be alive. The FBI warned yesterday, actually about 3 o'clock in the morning, most people read it this morning, an increased and imminent cybercrime threat to U.S. hospitals, which is very scary. Media outlets are reporting that ransomware attacks have hit 5 more U.S. hospitals today, which could hurt patient care. And, COVID is spiking. It couldn't be a worse time. Apparently, these attacks also are related to TrickBot or being generated by TrickBot. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I think some of them are Ryuk. Is that how you say it? R-U-R-Y-U-K. But that often does bring in TrickBot. First of all, it's unfortunate and just shows you how illegal and unethical they are. But let me say again, it's really, I'll push it back decades to, we're putting all kinds of national infrastructure and mission critical infrastructure like our 911 systems and our hospitals and things on the internet in an unsafe place. It really, unfortunately, all of us got on the internet, and all these systems are getting on the internet, and we're doing it in the internet needs to be better secured itself. We don't have that. So it's like everybody's putting these mission critical systems out on these really bad roadways that are full of potholes and criminals and things like that. It will improve and get better over time. I got to say, I love that the FBI and other people are trying to at least warn people and coordinate it. But the sad thing is that how ransomware or TrickBot breaks in is the same way the way that they break in has been the same way that any hacker or malware has been breaking in for the 33 years I've been in computer security. It's like people, well, what do we do different? There's really not so much different as you need to just do better at the things we know that prevents malware and hackers.
So let's talk about doing better, because obviously, things need to be done. For CISOs who are working at hospitals in our country, in light of, what we know, what should they be doing better today?
Well, so risk-based analysis, not all risks are the same. And figure out how things are breaking in, most likely to break in. Like if somebody's breaking into your house, you need to determine, are they coming through the door or the windows, and then fix that problem. Well, a lot of people, there's so many things, so many ways you can be broken into in the IT world that people get lost. They see threats as bubbles in a glass of champagne. And really, there's two threats that for 33 years have been the same two largest threats, and that's social engineering and unpatched software. Right now, social engineering is responsible for 70 to 90% of all malicious data breaches. Unpatched software is responsible for about 20 to 40%, and everything else added up together only accounts for 1 to 10% of the risk in most environments. So what I would say to any C-level is find out how things are breaking in your company. There's malware getting in your company today, even if it's just detected in a second or two, an hour or two, or 8 months later and removed. Find out how things are getting into your organization. It's probably going to be social engineering and unpatched software. And that's 90% of the problem, and has been 90% of the problem for 3 decades. I would say that C-levels need to focus on putting those threats down a little bit more. Right now, there's this huge misalignment, and the average organization only spends about 5% of their budget trying to put down social engineering and unpatched software. And they're spending all this money on antivirus and intrusion detection and all these advanced things, when the reality is, if you spent more time better fighting social engineering through a combination of policies, technical controls, and education, and you better patch the most critical, most likely software to be compromised, that's internet browsers, the operating system, things like that. If more organizations focused on just 2 of the threats, they'd be far better protected than trying to do everything great at once.
So Roger, let's talk a little bit about, the users. That's obviously a core competency for KnowBe4. It's what you do now. Should users, employees at companies know about something like TrickBot? And I don't mean technically, but just, at a surface level. They're not practitioners. They don't do what we do. They're not reading this stuff every day. Should they understand how evil this is? Should they understand that hospitals are at risk? Not necessarily because they work there. They work at a different company, but would they be more motivated to combat cybercrime, to become more aware when they understand that criminal mentality and what they're actually going after and what it means to the country?
Yeah, I mean, I think it certainly makes sense. You want the more information you share with people, the better chance everybody's rowing right in the same direction, and you're being more efficient. I also think that telling people, hey, one of the most popular types of malware, whether you give it a name, TrickBot or not, it steals all your passwords. So if you're saving your passwords in your browser, they're going to be compromised in a second. If you're that one mistake can not only make your professional enterprise organizational passwords compromised, but if you're at work and you're going to look at Amazon and buy something, sometimes they're getting that password too, and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and stuff like that. And so this bot, its first thing it wants to do is grab your password. It doesn't care as much about your company's password these days as your password, because then they can sell it to hackers. And that they're trying to not only encrypt, because think about it, the average person says, oh, it encrypts information, puts my system down. Well, that's bad. But if you tell them, well, they're taking your passwords and they're going to compromise your bank accounts and, and stuff like that, it gives a little bit more personal connection to it. So and tell them it's not just locking up system, it's exfiltrating data, it's exfiltrating your emails potentially and things like that and your passwords. So I think giving everybody a clear understanding of what's being done, how quickly it happens, how widespread it is, and that occasionally, and also occasionally it kills people, has killed people. It's certainly not a bad thing. The best way to motivate anybody in this world is with a story.
Right.
So,
when we were talking to James earlier this month, I mean, it really was just a few weeks ago, we, I think, had identified somewhere between 35 and 40 hospitals who suffered a ransomware attack this year. And now, just a few weeks later, it's over 60. Why are hospitals being targeted? Can you make any sense out of that compared to, other industries? Not that they're immune, but, the number is alarming, the number of hospitals that are under attack.
Yeah, so let me say I don't really personally have the data, and most people that get hit, they're just victims of opportunity. But there are far more people compromised. Like with TrickBot, it's tens of millions of compromised machines, and almost none of those people know they're compromised. So they're already compromised. It's just when the hackers decide to concentrate. And in this case, and I'm speculating, I think that they feel like there's they just want to get paid. They just want to get paid. So if your company's already overrun with things, and I talk to hospital people like, we had all this stuff planned this year we were going to do, and then COVID hit, and that completely killed our budgets, completely killed our focus. Everybody's super busy. A lot of employees are at home and stuff like that. So I think they really are they're like, oh, this hospital industry, healthcare industry is super stressed out. Employees are working from home for the first time. There's new policies and procedures. They're already overworked. They're having more patients. They have to respond faster. Let's take advantage of that and hurt them even more because they're just trying to get paid faster. That's really what it comes down to.
So 33 years. I mean, you gave us a really good background there. It's very, very scary to be where we are. What do you see looking ahead? 2021, the next few years, is ransomware going to diminish? Is it going to intensify? What do you think?
Well, so every year, I think for 33 years, certainly at least for 25 years, people said, do you think it's going to be better or worse next year? And I always say worse, and I've never been wrong. And people go, why? I said, because it's always been worse. Like ransomware. Ransomware was so successful last year at attacking anybody they wanted to. They were taking down hospitals, cities, police stations. I was like, how could it possibly get worse? And then they decided to start exfiltrating data, attacking customers, attacking employees. Like, it's just gotten worse. And let me tell you, I think the end game, whether it's next year or 5 years from now, is just going to be malware as a service bots. So whether it's TrickBot, an evil bot will start to try to break into your company, and they will download on the fly the modules and components they need to compromise your company. And when they're inside your company, depending on whether you have Chromebooks, Windows, Macintosh, they're going to change the components. And there will be, on our side, we're working on good guy bots, and threat hunting bots that will release on our network. And so they're going to start hunting for threats automated. And so I think, and I'm not making this up, I think 5 years from now, it's bad bot versus good bot. And whoever has the better AI wins. And that when both bots don't understand what they need to do or they get stuck, then the human being, the attacker on one side, the human adversary, and the defender on the other is going to come into play. But there's no doubt in my mind that it's going to be good bot versus bad bot, because TrickBot was kind of that evolutionary step that took that first step. Now it's just going to be an evolution of increasingly sophisticated malware and malware as a service. What we're seeing today, I think, is not nearly as bad. We're going to look back on this year and go, wow, I wish it was only as bad as that.
So historically, KnowBe4 as a company has done a great job, as well as anybody, with keeping up, innovating. They're constantly, developing on the platform. Mm-hmm. Give us a look ahead if you can. What is the company doing? Where is KnowBe4 looking to help its customers in 2021 and beyond?
Well, so I think we recognize that everybody's trying their best to make the best defense. And again, it's three things. It's the best policies and procedures you can make. We certainly help educate people the type of policies they should have to help reduce risk. Technical controls, that's your firewalls, your content filterings, your secure configuration. And then it's security awareness training, which is what we specialize in. don't care what year you pick out again, social engineering's always been a top threat. And no matter how great your policies are, no matter how great your technical controls are, you'll always have some badness. Bots or hackers get to an end user that then has to make a security decision. And so we're very good at making sure people are trained about the different threats. But also, I would say the biggest thing we're trying to say is you need to create a healthy, skeptical culture in the company. You're not trying to train one person or 5 people. You have to train the entire company. And to do that, you have to change the culture of the entire company to care and do something. Because just because you're aware, you may not care sometimes if you think it's somebody else's problem. So it's this idea of creating this culture of we're in this together. This is, and here are the signs and symptoms of something bad happening, and this is what you should do, which is report it to the IT security or click on your, fish alert button or whatever, and delete it or ignore it. But don't just delete it and not tell somebody. If you open a file attachment accidentally, don't just be quiet about it because you're embarrassed. So trying to create this healthy level of skepticism within the culture of the company so that everybody is, again, rowing better in the same direction, being as efficient as possible to reduce risk.
So it's no secret that you're my favorite author in security. So I can't let you go without, just a quick plug for your latest book. And it's more than a plug. I mean, it's going to help people as much as a lot of what we're talking about today. So tell us about the book.
So thank you. It's my 12th book. It's called Hacking Multi-Factor Authentication. And that came about because Kevin Mitnick, our chief hacking officer, actually hacked LinkedIn and their multi-factor authentication solution. And everybody's like, oh my God, you can hack multi-factor authentication? When I was talking to reporters and stuff, I was like, yeah, I can think of 10 ways to hack multi-factor authentication off the top of my head. And it led to me creating a webinar. It's called the 12 Ways to Hack 2FA. And the book has over 50 ways. And really what the end result is, I tell people multi-factor authentication significantly reduces risk of some attack scenarios. Like if an attacker is sending you an email asking for your password and you don't have a password, not going to be successful. But it doesn't stop most attacking scenarios or social engineering and unpatched software, and most of that does not care about your multi-factor authentication solution. And so the book says MFA is good, use it when you can. Although it's only going to work on 1 or 2% of your websites, but use it when you can. But make sure people are educated to know that you're not impervious to being hacked. A lot of people go, oh, I've got this device or this thing, and I don't have to worry about hacking or phishing emails. And it's just not true. So you need to let people be aware that, hey, you still need to pay attention to domain names and people asking for things. You can't throw out common sense just because you have an MFA token. So that's really what the book is about.
And is the book out now?
Yeah, it just came out a couple of days ago. What's funny is I don't have my friends are sending me copies of it and everything. I don't have my copies yet, so I'm waiting for them to show up on the doorstep.
And it's on Amazon?
It's on Amazon. It's a 600-page book. It's a very thick book. And let me say, it covers 130 different MFA solutions that I tried to hack. It tells you which ones are the better ones. I pick winners and losers, and I tell people how they can pick the best ones for themselves and their companies.
So is this one of the benefits of working with KnowBe4? I mean, they do great work in social engineering and security awareness training, phishing simulation, but do they get to talk to Roger also?
Yeah, absolutely. And let me say, the hacking MFA, I wouldn't have written a book if it wasn't that, Kevin Mitnick came up with an attack, and it seemed like the world was surprised. It was funny, that attack that he did had been around for 20 years, but I was surprised of how many, not only regular people didn't know that it could be done, but I had people that were 10 and 15, 20-year computer security professionals that were surprised. And I went, no. I was like, what? There must be a big misconception that you don't need to worry about being hacked if you have MFA. And when I started to do the research, boy, that's exactly what happens. People are like, oh, I had no idea. And let me say, I know I'm running on here, but I was talking to a credit union, and the guy said, about hacking MFA, he goes, we have been hacked worse since we've implemented MFA. I want to go back to login names and passwords. And I was like, what? He said, yeah. He said, we had attacks, we had people, but he goes, it's now that they know that we're using a particular MFA, they're targeting our customers with a particular attack, which is likely to work, and the customers don't think they can be hacked, so they're getting hacked more often. So they're having to send out emails going, hey, be aware, you're still vulnerable just because you're using this MFA solution.
So we're going to bring you back on. Maybe we'll get Kevin to come on too, and we'll do something on hacking MFA.
Sure. I'd love to.
All right. Thank you so much, Roger.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, everybody.
I'm Steve Morgan, founder of Cybersecurity Ventures and editor-in-chief at Cybercrime magazine. Joining us today was Roger Grimes, data-driven defense evangelist for KnowBe4, the world's first and largest new school security awareness training and simulated phishing platform that helps you manage the ongoing problem of social engineering. To learn more about our sponsor KnowBe4, visit KnowBe4.com. You can keep up with all of our media at cybercrimemagazine.com.